Welcome to your Canadiens Connection on Rocket Sports Radio. We are proud to be the trusted source for all things Habs for more than a decade. This is the Canadiens Connection Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio, keeping you informed, engaged, and entertained. My name is Michael Spinella, and I'll be your host for the next hour. This is episode 267 of the Canadiens Connection podcast, and I'm very pleased to be joined in the studio by my co-host, the editor of the Hockey News Montreal, the founder and the president of Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens. How are you doing today? And I guess an early happy Halloween. I know it's a few days away, but we're still getting pretty close. It is spooky season.
Happy Halloween to you and all our listeners. And what a great week for the Montreal Canadiens. Everybody seems to be in a bit better mood when the Canadiens have a winning week, and they certainly did this week, and we'll talk about that. And we seem to get, well, you know what? The funny thing is, when the Canadiens are doing well, we get a lot of response, get a lot of emails, get a lot of texts. When the Canadiens are doing awful, we get a lot of emails, we get a lot of texts. So we've got a great Canadiens Connection community, and we're always happy to hear from all of them.
Yeah, this is a podcast for the listeners, and we love to engage with them. And that's going to come back quite a bit throughout this episode. But first of all, we do have quite a bit of Montreal Canadiens news to get to. A few games from this past week, some roster updates, prospects, and just some general news from the NHL. And then in segment 2, we're going to reach into our Rocket Sports Mailbag. We're about a month into the season almost, so I think this is a good time to see where our listeners are at, to see what their brain space is like, and if they have any questions for us. Then in segment 3, it's the Have Your Say segment. Our Canadiens Connection question of the week is, Habs have won 3 of 4 games this last week. Has your opinion changed? Is this team a playoff team? We want to hear from you. This is a very interactive podcast, and we love to hear from our listeners, questions, comments, anything at all. Rick, what's the best way for our listeners to reach out to us?
Absolutely, they're a playoff team. No, what are you thinking? They're not a playoff team. Whatever your opinion is or anything in between, text us, 5853-ROCKET. That's 5853-ROCKET, 585-376-2538, if you don't have the little letters printed on your keypad.
And make sure you're following at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can also check out our website, CanadiensConnection.fm. And for those listeners with a lot more to say, I believe we also have an email, don't we, Rick?
We do. hello@rocketsportsmedia.com. hello@rocketsportsmedia.com. Send us an email.
So we have you covered. Make sure you continue to check out our comprehensive game previews and post-game recaps for every Montreal Canadiens game at thn.com/Montreal. That's thn.com/Montreal. And since we last spoke, Rick, Montreal has played 4 games. They won 3 out of 4, and let's go all the way back to last weekend on October the 21st. The Washington Capitals visit Montreal, and Montreal comes away with a 3-2 overtime victory. Jake Allen steals the show. Montreal went up 2-0 heading into the third period, but then Dylan Strome of the Washington Capitals pots 2 consecutive goals in the third to send this thing to overtime, and it didn't take Cole Caulfield very long to score in overtime. I get the feeling that Caulfield really doesn't like that extra frame, because he wasted no time. This was under a minute when he scored.
Yeah, he's earning his reputation as an overtime hero. That whole play was fascinating. He was out for his first shift in overtime. As we know, the players like to take short shifts. He was headed to the bench. He had waved his replacement on, and then spotted Nick Suzuki with the puck, made the little curl, received the pass from Suzuki, and scored the game winner. And that, not a spoiler, but that's not the only time he would do that this past week. We're also, what is kind of a theme is losing 2-goal leads, both the Canadiens and their opponents this week. And you mentioned Jake Allen. He was spectacular. That one save that he made, Ovechkin to Nicholas Backstrom, tremendous. But overall, a great game for Jake Allen.
And Jake Allen continued to amaze on October the 23rd as Montreal headed into Buffalo, and they came out with a 3-1 victory. Allen with 36 saves. Marty St. Louis said that he was so impressed with Jake Allen's play against Washington that essentially earned him the start in Buffalo. Buffalo, I thought, was actually the better team. They seemed to get the majority of the chances, but Jake Allen could not be solved in that one. Tanner Pearson and Brendan Gallagher put up a goal and assist apiece in the third period to close that one out and seal the victory.
You're right about Jake Allen. Buffalo had 69 shot attempts. He made 36 saves. Buffalo had 12 high danger chances at 5-on-5. To just 4 for Montreal. So Don Granato, the head coach of Buffalo, plays it straight. Not very emotional. He said, I thought their goaltender played real well. Yeah, understatement of the year.
And then it was a back-to-back. Montreal headed back home the very next day on October the 24th, where they hosted the New Jersey Devils, and they lose 5-2. This was Caden Primo's first start of the season after being a healthy scratch. He dazzled and he disappointed in this one. I thought the first half of the game was pretty good. He made a lot of big, flashy saves. He really held his own in the Montreal net, but as soon as he hit the 10-minute mark of that second period, things really fell apart for Caden Primo. A few easy ones got past him. Former Hab, Tyler Toffoli, gets the hat trick against his old club. And the only other thing I'll point out is Michael Matheson has this highlight reel goal going end to end for a breakaway goal on the power play. And wow, this one I had to watch a few times as he zigzagged around all of the New Jersey Devils to get a goal there. But the New Jersey Devils very much the dominant team in this one.
Michael Matheson was having a terrible game. He was leading the team in giveaways. He was awful. And then Marty St. Louis pulled Caden Primo with about, 10 minutes to go in the third period, and Matheson goes end-to-end, Bobby Orr style fashion. And all anyone's talking about after the game is Mike Matheson, and with why wouldn't you? Same with Caden Primo. Didn't have a great game, but that desperation save he made against Andre Palat was spectacular. Struggled the rest of the game. New Jersey's got a very good team. Tyler Toffoli, as you said, with a hat trick, but Jack Hughes right now, the best player in the NHL, 4 assists that night, and he set a record for the most points ever in the first 5 games of the season with 14.
Well, it takes an injured Connor McDavid for that to happen, but I'll definitely put him ahead of Austin Matthews at the very least.
I think we all would, yeah.
So a couple days off in between this one. On the 26th of October, the Columbus Blue Jackets visit the Montreal Canadiens. And, Montreal wins 4-3 in overtime. After going up 2-0 in the first period, the Habs managed to pot 2 power play goals and send the game to overtime, tied 3-3. And the week finishes how it began, with a quick Cole Caulfield goal in overtime to seal the deal.
Yeah, just 42 seconds left in overtime when Cole Caulfield, he didn't want it to go to a shootout, so he finished that one. It was his 4th goal of the season, his 2nd game winner. And in this game, it was Columbus. They twice had 2-goal leads and squandered them. The Canadiens, and if you look at the preseason predictions, some of them had the Canadiens slightly ahead, some of them had the Blue Jackets slightly ahead, but both teams predicted to finish in the bottom 5. So you saw real good and you saw real bad from both teams.
Absolutely. So the Canadiens' record is 4-2-1. That's 12th in the NHL, so that's not too bad. Please make sure you're checking out the Habs Notepad, Habs headlines, and feature articles and game day posts appearing regularly at thn.com/Montreal. Looking at our roster news, on Tuesday, the Canadiens announced that defenseman David Savard will miss 6 to 8 weeks with an injury. He blocked a shot in Buffalo, and, it seems to have hurt him pretty bad.
Yeah, that was a Tage Thompson shot. fractured his hand. The whole sequence saw him lose his stick, saw him lose his skate blade, but the shot from Thompson fractured his left hand, and unfortunately, he's going to miss considerable time.
The Canadiens recalled defenseman Gustav Lindstrom from the Laval Rocket. He played 2 games, and he has zeros across his stat line after that.
But I thought he looked really good, and you didn't notice him a whole lot, so that's a good thing for a defenseman coming up. We had in our preseason predictions, I thought that we'd see a fair bit of Lindstrom, and we did. That was an emergency call on recall on Tuesday, so we'll see if the Canadiens for the road trip will do the paperwork to get him on the roster. As in the extra defenseman.
Caden Gooley continues to be day-to-day with an upper body injury. He should return soon. Definitely missing him as an anchor on that defense. I think Montreal, they're doing their best without him, but Caden Gooley certainly leaves a big hole there.
Yeah, and from the game day skate this morning, we have news that Lindstrom will be scratched and that Caden Gooley will return to the lineup after being out with that upper body injury, and we've heard lots of speculation from his wrist to a concussion to whatever it was. He's going to be back in the lineup against the Jets on Saturday night, and we're also going to see Joel Armia play his first game of the season on Saturday night. Coming out will be Jesse Ylonen and why not Michael Pezzetta? I don't get it. I don't get it, Michael.
Marty St. Louis loves Michael Pezzetta. Michael Pezzetta, he certainly plays with his heart, and I think he can be a useful player, but it's a shame that Jesse Ylonin's the one coming out, unfortunately.
He's played really well, and you've heard Marty St. Louis compliment him. He was promoted to the first wave of the penalty kill with Jake Evans. He's I think it's been a surprise, but he's had a solid start to his season.
Absolutely. The Canadiens have announced that Pierre Turgeon will be honored prior to the Canadiens game on November the 14th. He spent parts of 3 seasons in Montreal with a little over 100 games. He wasn't there too long, so it's a bit of a surprise, but Pierre Turgeon is still a really great player, and he had quite the career.
Yeah, he did, and I guess the most memorable part of that was the closing of the Forum, holding the torch, and moving on over to the Bell Center. So he'll be part of the Canadiens' Ring of Honor. Guy Carbonneau being the last player to receive that honor previously.
Former Canadian Thomas Plekanec has retired from hockey. He spent a few seasons in Czechia playing with Jaromír Jágr, that team that Jágr owns. He had a great NHL career, played over 1,000 games, put up over 600 points. So it's sad to see that Plekanec is no longer playing hockey.
Yeah, injuries are going to keep him out. He just lasted 9 games this season, had 4 points in those games, a goal and 3 assists. Was the captain of Kladno, but he will hang up the skates, and we know that that Canadiens fans have a soft spot in their heart for Thomas Plekanec. He's played over 1,000 games. That weird situation where at the end of the season he went to that other team down the road. I don't even want to think of him with his turtleneck in that blue jersey. But 1,001 games, and he had a great NHL career, and then extended it, as you said, going over to Czechia.
So now let's get to our Habs prospect report.
It's time for the Rocket Report. The Rocket Sports Media Team is your premier source for information about the Laval Rocket, the AHL affiliate of the Montreal Canadiens, as well as Habs prospects playing in the CHL, NCAA, and leagues around the world. Bookmark thn.com/Montreal to follow our comprehensive coverage of Canadiens prospects.
So each week we highlight a Montreal Canadiens prospect, and this week let's go with a fan favorite. Let's shine the spotlight on one Owen Beck. In 8 games, he has 4 goals and 5 points with the Peterborough Petes. He's been playing quite well. Kind of a shame to see him end up back in the OHL. If the Montreal Canadiens had any more roster spots, I do think that there was a legitimate chance of him making the NHL. But nonetheless, he's having a pretty good time playing in the CHL.
Yeah, I don't know what he can learn, what he can add to his resume playing in the OHL. Maybe he'll be added to the Team Canada junior team at the beginning this time, not midway through. But he had an assist on Friday night in the Peterborough Petes overtime win against the Niagara Ice Dogs, and it was a week ago. And just about the time when I saw a lot of comments on Twitter, why are people so high on this Owen Beck? He's gone back to the OHL and there's no offense to his game. He's purely a defensive player, which, that's not bad in itself. But the Petes were playing against the Oshawa Generals. The Generals won that game in overtime 4-3, and it was Oshawa Generals versus Owen Beck, because Owen Beck scored all 3 goals, had a hat trick versus Oshawa, and kind of silenced his haters on that night.
Let's take a look at another Habs prospect that people are pretty high on, talking about Lane Hudson. He was back in the lineup for Boston University on October the 20th. It was announced that he was injured taking a big hit along the boards, but he came back and had a pretty good game, didn't he?
He did. That was his first game back, and we talked about it last week. Jay Pandolfo had said, he had taken that serious hit, but this was his first game. Friday night, his Boston University Terriers were up against the Minutemen from Massachusetts, and Lane Hudson was on the first pair with Gavin McCarthy and had a great game, a goal and 2 assists.
So not a bad way to come back at all.
For sure.
Sticking with the theme of the NCAA, in this week's USCHO division poll, the University of Minnesota is remaining in the #1 spot. We talked about this poll a couple weeks back, and that was when the Boston team was #1. So what happened here, Rick? What changed?
Well, we said that Boston had fallen. They had lost a game first time in 6 or 7 years. Which was to an underdog, and that was a big surprise. Last week, they dropped from 1st to 6th. This week, they dropped from 6th to 9th. They are now in 9th. This is a poll. This is a ranking. And Minnesota is up there in first place, followed by Denver, then Boston College, North Dakota, and Quinnipiac. Why do we follow this? Why do we care? Why should you care? Well, Minnesota, for example, Luke Mittelstadt, Rhett Pitlick, both Canadiens prospects. Number 2 overall is Denver. Sam Harris is there. Boston College in 3rd place. Who's there? Jacob Fowler. And, of course, Boston University, which we mentioned, in 9th. Lane Hudson, Luke Tuck. Luke Tuck had a goal on Friday night as well, and he's there with Lane Hudson. So that's why we care. That's why we're reporting on Canadiens prospects playing on very good teams against very good competition, which is great for their development.
So let's take a look at the Laval Rocket from this past week, the Montreal Canadiens AHL affiliate. Going back to October the 21st, Laval takes a trip into Belleville, and they lose 5-4. Logan Mailloux scored his very first goal with the Laval Rocket, so that was a very special moment for him. He played very well, and I think he's been a really good defenseman for this team. But unfortunately, it was the Zach McEwen show for the Belleville Senators, scoring 2 goals. Strauss Mann got the start. He was all right. He's still looking for his first win of the season.
Yeah, it's the Laval Rocket had an easy start to their season, I think, much like the Canadiens in terms of scheduling. A lot of games at home, and venturing out on the road is a whole different thing, and a whole different experience and level of competition for some of these players.
So they had a few days off in between this one. Their next game wasn't until October the 22nd as they visit Rochester. And 5 goals in the first 2 periods from Rochester really sealed the deal. Mason Jobst got a hat trick for Rochester as well. Jakub Dobis was the one in net for the Laval Rocket. He did not receive a whole lot of help from his teammates. He was really hung up to dry.
Look at the score and say, oh, this has to be goaltending. It wasn't goaltending. Rochester was really good on special teams. They scored a shorthanded goal, 2 power play goals, I think. And Dobis didn't get much help at all, especially in their own zone, in front of the net. There was 6'5" Murray. He plunked in front of Jakub Dobis all night. Tough night for the goaltender, and the Laval Rocket they're awful in their own end, to be kind. There's got to be some work done there, and the funny thing is that with a light schedule this week, there was a lot of practice time. There was even a development day, as they're calling them, the second one of the year, I believe, for Laval, where the whole player development group comes in. JF Wool sits back, and Adam Nicholas and Pellerin, and they all take over, and Paul Byron take over the practice and do some development work with them. And it was a tough week for Laval. But again, going out on the road is a different thing. You saw Joshua Waugh. He's still leading the AHL in scoring, but maybe not as effective on the road. Actually, the Rocket have 2 players in the top 5 in AHL scoring, that being Joshua Waugh and Elias Anderson. And don't look at the number 8 position in AHL scoring, because that's Yuri Kulich, member of the Rochester Americans. Why is that? Why should we care at all? Well, he was selected first round, 28th overall, in the 2022 NHL draft, tearing up the AHL. Philippe Machard was selected 2 places earlier, and Jeff Wool doesn't care for that particular player, and Philippe Machard finds himself back in the OHL, although he had 2 assists for Kitchener on Friday night.
So a tough start to the season for the Laval Rocket. 1-4-1-0 is their record. 32nd in the AHL. So you mentioned they're scoring lots of goals, but unfortunately they're having even more goals scored against them, which is leading them to that record. I'll also point out that the one win for Laval comes from one Jakub Dobis, who was in net. So it'd be nice to see, Coach JF Wool maybe give his prospects a bit more of a role on this team, because those seem to be the players that are doing the best for the Laval Rocket.
Well, that's the issue. Prior to the season, we heard that this team's going to struggle early because we're loaded with young players. We haven't seen those players, sometimes not in the lineup and sometimes not in important positions. And you look at the Rockets lines against the Rochester Americans last night, and you had a top line of Simoneau, Stevens, and Anderson. And Anderson, as I said, has been having a good season, but those aren't prospects. They just aren't prospects. The third line was Gignac centering Laguerre and Mayo. These aren't prospects, and Riley Kidney stuck on the fourth line. And when there was important face-offs in that game on Friday night, it was Lucas Condata, that was out there taking those important face-offs all over the ice. Mishak didn't get a sniff, neither did Kidney. The Laval Rocket are missing a development opportunity, and they're losing with veterans. So I don't know what is going on there.
So we'll continue to keep you up to date with the Laval Rocket in between now and our next show coming out next Saturday. They play 3 games starting tonight, October the 28th. Laval visits Syracuse, and then they go back home for a few games, hosting Utica on the 1st and hosting Toronto on the 3rd. So we'll see what happens in those games. I'm hoping they can play some more prospects and maybe get a couple wins, but we'll make sure that we keep you up to date.
Just a note on those upcoming games, and of course, you can find all of the recaps from our team, from Amy Johnson, from Chris G, at our website, thn.com/Montreal. But the game on Saturday night in Syracuse, that will be the Rocket facing former Rocket head coach Joel Bouchard, now the head coach of the Syracuse Crunch. And the Hurricanes just sent Kochetkov. Remember, they don't have an affiliate. So they just sent Kochetkov from Carolina to Syracuse. Will he be in net? And of course, we know one of the top goaltending prospects in the league overall.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we move along here, let's also talk about the Trois-Rivières Lions. This is Montreal's ECHL affiliate. So we're going to go one level down, and they played a few games this past week. October the 21st, they visited Maine, and they come out with a 4-3 win. And then on the 22nd, they have a 4-1 win. A couple of standouts from this team. Yakov Novak's been off to a good start, putting up some points. Cedric Montminy, who's been with the Trois-Rivières for a few seasons now, he's been great. And goalie Joe Verbetic has been fantastic in net for the Trois-Rivières Lions. So I wonder if at some point he might get a call up to the AHL.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. And the Lions off, as you said, to a great start. There was a Friday game before that Saturday game against Maine in Trois-Rivières. So last weekend they had 3 games in 3 different cities over 3 days, and they had 3 wins. You can't beat that. And again, you can find all the coverage on the Trois-Rivières Lions at thn.com/Montreal.
And we also have a new website that's up and running, THN for the QMJHL. You can find that at thn.com/QMJHL. And we've posted a couple of articles on there. So if you're looking for English language coverage of the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, you can find it all there. And Rick, what can you tell us about this?
Well, it's we're covering all of the hockey levels in Quebec and the Maritimes as well, and this is I think it's really fun. We have Chris, we have Amy, we have Jeremy, all covering the Q for us, and because the QMJHL has been on hard times. Just 12 prospects graduated, taken in the NHL draft in June, but it's been a feeder league and a league that Canadiens fans say don't ignore because you want to keep an eye on talent in your back door. So we've done that. We're looking at it, and so you're going to want to watch our coverage there. There's a World Under-17 tournament coming up. It's going to take place in Charlottetown and Summerside and PEI. And there will be talent there from the Q, 11 players, 4 from the Maritimes division. And you'll want to read about that, a great article done by Jeremy Boucher. That tournament's coming up starting, I believe, on the 2nd of November. So it's your chance to get to see names, get to see players who may one day be in the draft, be draft possibilities for the Montreal Canadiens.
So make sure you're staying up to date with all of our content on Canadiens prospects at thn.com/Montreal, and stay up to date with our best English language coverage of the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League at thn.com/QMJHL. So we have plenty of resources for you to stay up to date with all the young talent. Now it's time to get to our quotes of the week, and we just have the one quote. This one comes from Sean Monahan, and he's talking about Cole Caulfield and some of the vibes within the locker room. There seems to be a lot of positivity in there, and he has a lot of very kind things to say about it.
For sure. I mean, even just every day in practice, I mean, he's got to have the most energy I've ever seen in a person. I think it's contagious. So, I mean, being around him, being his teammate is something that I don't take for granted.
So Sean Monahan, not very effusive, but you can tell when he says something, he means it. He's been around the league. He's seen a number of different locker rooms. Talking about the Canadiens locker room, who drives it, who runs it, who injects energy into it. Well, that might be one Cole Caulfield. His energy is contagious, says Sean Monahan. And we talked about why would Sean Monahan come for a bargain price for 1 year to Montreal. And part of the reason, of course, is because of the players that he gets to play with and be around. And Cole Caulfield is somebody that he respects a lot for what he brings on and off the ice.
So we'll finish out this first segment here by talking about some hockey news and notes from around the league. First off, the NHL unveiled NHL Edge. A brand new website was launched. It's still got a few bugs, so some kinks to work out, but it's a really good resource to find all sorts of stats and whatnot. You can find things about the speed that players are skating at. You can find things out about hard shots and whatnot. So it's pretty cool if you're a fan of the NHL and different stats.
Yeah, it's something that the NHL has been building for the last couple of years. There are embeddable trackers in the jerseys that the players have been wearing, and then they position 14 different infrared cameras around each arena to collect information. So they got all kinds of information. I should say those sensors are not only in the players' jerseys, but they're also in the pucks. So they can track movement of the puck, of the players, as you say, skating speed, the shot speed, the location of saves, all those kinds of things, and possession time, the amount of time the puck spends in a particular zone. All that information is great. We should say this is phase one of the rollout of the information that they're providing. It's your entry point into getting used to this information. There's season by season stats, but there's not the ability yet for those stats to be cumulative, which would be important. And the comparisons at this point are just one versus one team versus another team, one player versus another team versus another player. So it's limited what it is, and I just say that context is really important here. Don't infer things into it that aren't there. It's the information it gives you is basic, and it is like any other tool that we have. It is one piece of the information. It's not definitive by any means. It's just one piece of information to add to this. And I think back to the introduction of analytics into hockey, and some people used Corsi as if it was the be all and end all. That once you know Corsi, you can figure out what happened in the game, and of course, Corsi was supposed to measure possession. Corsi doesn't measure possession; it infers possession. Corsi says that if it measures shot attempts, and if you have more shot attempts, we infer that you possess the puck more often. So think about that and apply that to the new set of stats that are available. And don't make those inferences. It's a very important tool, but it's not a definitive tool, and it's something that's a project that's in process. So we'll see more and more pieces added to this, and that will help make it more valuable.
Yeah, and I think this will come back in our next segment here, where I think somebody may have gotten carried away looking at one specific stat and not the whole picture. So stay tuned for that one. A few more notes from the NHL. The Frozen Frenzy on ESPN was a success. That went down on Tuesday. All 32 teams played. It was hard to keep track of from my perspective, and certainly made me commit some bad decisions on my fantasy team. Benched a few players that did well, started a few players that did not.
So there was two things that were going on simultaneously on Tuesday. One was, as you said, all 16 teams, or all 32 teams were in action with 16 contests, and as well, ESPN for the American viewers rolled out this Frozen Frenzy. It's a whip around show. They go from highlight to highlight to highlight, much the way NFL Red Zone does it. And from all reports, and I saw some clips, it seemed to be successful. It got new eyes on the game and the kind of coverage that some of the new viewers would be interested in watching. I thought it was interesting that Elliot Friedman said, I guess it was asked, would this ever come to Canada? And he said it would be much harder to do in Canada because of regional rights. The regional rights, the blackouts, all of that. How would you centralize that? How would you put it all together for all the different markets? And my answer there is, why don't we get rid of regional rights? Why do we not? And people blame TSN, people blame Sportsnet. They're just going by the rules of the NHL and Canadian teams in instituting the blackouts. The blackouts are from the NHL, not from the networks. And it's because the teams think, the NHL thinks, that if you live in a particular place, if you live in Manitoba, you're a Winnipeg Jets fan, and that's all we're going to show you. We're going to black out the other games. Similarly, we know that our Ontario viewers have a hard time sometimes getting the Canadiens games. It's old-fashioned. It's outdated. Let's make some changes there, and then a red zone kind of a frenzy kind of coverage, Frozen Frenzy, is possible in Canada.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And some of our members here at Rocket Sports have issues with blackouts. I know a lot of our listeners as well. So, like you said, this is pretty outdated from that aspect. I'd like to see that change too. As you know, we do have Montreal Canadiens fans and listeners from all across the globe. We'll see that throughout this episode, where there's truly fans everywhere.
Absolutely.
So last point here is NHL teams did vote in favor of staging a decentralized draft. And big sad. This is not something that I'm happy to see. I don't blame teams for voting that way. If the option was, okay, do you want to stay at home or do you want to travel? I think most people would rather stay at home for work. That's fair. But you know what? The NHL draft, the big thing about it is it's a spectacle. It's getting everyone in hockey in one place. That whole experience of seeing all the players, all the GMs, all the scouts, and everybody all in that one city at once is truly something special. I got to see that when the draft came here to Montreal, just walking down the street and seeing everyone. It's kind of sad that this is the direction things seem to be going. Nothing's official yet, of course, but yeah, it's unfortunate that that's how it is. And to be honest, if this is a decentralized draft, I wonder why would you go as a fan at that point if no one's really around? And what's the fun in tuning in and watching? I think that really takes away from the event.
Yeah, of course, the prospects are the focus, and that's, to me, that's half of the draft is seeing who's picked, where they go, who they are, all of those things. But that, in the way the draft is structured right now, especially if you're on site, that's only half the attraction, and the other half is, as you said, seeing everybody in hockey in one place. And the argument's been made. Nobody else does this. NBA is decentralized. The NFL's decentralized. They're all back in their bunkers, their war rooms, making their picks. But that's what makes the NHL's draft so unique and so special. And that would be really sad to lose that. And I know that teams talk about, the draft is late in June, and then they got to get back and get ready for free agency on July 1st. And logistically, it's tough. Well, the calendar isn't fixed. I mean, they can move the Stanley Cup final earlier, therefore having the draft earlier, or, oh my goodness, heaven forbid, move the free agency off Canada Day so some of us can actually get to enjoy Canada Day. Oh my, like this seems like there are other ways to solve this problem. Elliot Friedman said that some of the teams had complained that the tables are too close and that information is being stolen. Now, I understand that, but there's other ways of dealing with that than leaving everybody back in for the Canadiens back in their in the Bell Center, in their conference room. There's other ways of approaching that, I think. But it looks like we're going to move in this direction. Now, is it going to be 2024? Vegas might have something to say about that because they're going to want, and maybe teams and executives want to go to Vegas. So maybe we won't see this implemented until 2025.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about how we can change the draft to improve it, I think you can get rid of the 5 minutes it takes to make the pick. You can speed up that process. You don't necessarily need everyone on the team to go up and then someone's kids and all that whole deal and then a 5-minute speech. Like, you can get rid of that stuff and still have everyone in the same place, I think. So I really hope that this is something that doesn't go through, and it's really unfortunate that this is the direction that it's headed in.
It will change it visually for sure. It'll change the fan experience, but it also changes it for the teams. And we heard Brian Burke this week say that the Sedin deal that he was able to make to draft both of them would never have happened in a decentralized draft.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? One of the best things about the draft the last few seasons is seeing all of the Arizona Coyotes staff in those matching jerseys. We're not going to get that anymore. Come on, NHL, do better.
Yeah.
So we'll take a break here. Coming up, you'll hear from our sponsors, DraftKings, and then you'll want to stick around for this one. It's the big topic segment. We're reaching to the Rocket Sports Mailbag, and stay with us. This is the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio.
We are back with another week of football, and DraftKings Sportsbook is keeping us in on the NFL action with great offers every single game day. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Throw $5 down on any of this week's epic matchups to walk away an instant winner. And DraftKings isn't stopping there. All customers can take advantage of 2 new offers every game day this September. Football's more fun when you're in on the action, so download the app now and sign up with code THPN. New customers can bet just $5 to get $200 instantly in bonus bets, only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, with code THPN. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, KS. Licensee partner Golden Nugget Lake Charles, LA. 21 plus age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/football terms for eligibility, terms, and responsible gaming resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply.
Welcome back to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. I'm Michael Spinella. You can find me on Twitter at The Spinella. With me in the studio is the president and founder of Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens. You can give him a follow at Rocket Sports on Twitter. You can also follow this podcast just by searching at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can also check out the website, CanadiensConnection.fm. And just a little reminder, if you have not already, hit that subscribe button on the Canadiens Connection podcast in your favorite podcasting app, in the player, wherever you get your podcasts. That way you never miss a single episode as we come out every single Saturday throughout the year. And, well, it's that time of year, Rick. It's I guess, can we call it the spooky edition of the Rocket Sports Mailbag?
All right.
So instead of filling our mailbag with candies, our listeners have filled up our bags with questions, which I kind of prefer that. It's the end of the first month of the NHL regular season, and it's the perfect time to see where our listeners are at and what they're thinking about. They have plenty of questions for us. We're always happy to hear from Canadiens Connection listeners, and the mailbag is one of my favorite things to do. There's plenty of topics that we'll get to, and these include the playoffs, Kirby Dach, Jake Allen, Yoel Armia, Caden Primo, Joshua Waugh, and a very, very speedy guy in Juraj Slavkovsky.
Well,
and you're excited for this, Rick?
I am excited for this, and anytime. Well, I guess we did a midsummer mailbag, and it seemed right. We're coming to the end of October. Not a full month of hockey, but we're turning the page on the calendar, so the perfect time to hear from all of our listeners. And one of the reasons I think we both like it so much is the intelligent questions that we get, the passionate questions that we get, and the fact that, listen, we say we're your inside link to the Montreal Canadiens, and we're proud to be a trusted source for the last decade and a half. The fact that our listeners ask us a question and trust us to give them an honest, direct answer, and I think that's what I like about this most.
Absolutely. And without further ado, let's get down to it. Very first question comes from Alain in Cap Rouge, Quebec. And what he had to say is, when is Joshua Waugh getting called up? He has proven to be too good for the AHL. So right now, Joshua Waugh has 12 points in 2 games. And while we had a couple questions about Joshua Waugh, we had another one pretty similar coming in from Marcel in Lennoxville, Quebec. And what he had to say is, Raphael Harvey-Pinard doesn't fit on that first line, so it's time to call up Joshua Waugh. So I'll kind of start things off. As per Alain, I agree. I think Joshua Waugh has been great in the early parts of the season for Laval. But let's, how about we be a little bit more patient? Let Joshua Waugh just break down the door and force Montreal's hand into calling him up. I think patience is going to be key, although I wouldn't be surprised if we had a look at him. I think a couple injuries at forward, we could see him get called up. Maybe in the back half of the season, they want to give him a look. And as per Marcel, I agree. Raphael Harvey-Pinard is not the ideal fit on that first line. I don't think he's a first-line player at the moment. I don't know if Joshua Waugh is the right person to fill in that slot. We'll see. I think it could be interesting to experiment with down the road. But I think, Rick, you and I agree that it'd be nice to have a defensive conscience sliding in beside Suzuki and Caulfield. That might be a little bit of a better fit. Absolutely,
and that's a part of the game. We know that we saw in junior that Joshua Waugh played on the penalty kill, but it's a game. It's a part of his game that's under development. And yes, he's all offense. You said 12 points in 2 games. It's actually 6 games, but I know what you're getting at there. It's 2 points a game, And the issue is, and is he too good for the AHL? Well, we don't know that yet. It's really early. 6 games is not a good enough measure. And the Laval Rocket are finally getting out on the road, and there's a big difference than playing at home at Place Belle, where the crowd is supportive of you and is intimidating your opponent. JFU gets to do the last change and controls that, and so he's controlling matchups for you. And there's just a whole life of learning to live on the road. Joshua Waugh, interviewed this week, he said this is he's always lived with billet families, and they looked after his laundry. They looked after his meals. He's having to look after that himself now. He's renting an apartment on his own. I think it's Lafreniere's apartment, if that's correct, in the Montreal area. And it's a whole different life. And still, you have to play hockey, and you're playing against much bigger and more physical players than you did in the Q. And going into some of these arenas, they're pretty hostile. Utica is a really intimidating place to play. Syracuse, and I remember asking the coaches about this. Why is Syracuse always such a hard game for Laval? And why is it always so physical? And they talked about the physical dimensions being different. The way the corners are cut off, and making it a much more physical place. Joshua Waugh has to go through all of that. He also has to go through adversity. Let him go, and how is he going to react to going 3 or 4 or a week without any points, and learn to find a way back in, and learn to play well even when he's not getting points. All of those things are lessons of learning to be a pro player, and it takes a whole lot more than 6 games to learn that. So, Alain, I think we're going to wait a bit before we declare that he's too good for the AHL. Marcel, about Raphael Harvey-Pinard not working on the first line, 100%. 100%. He doesn't. I think you see that Marty St. Louis has been rotating RHP with Josh Anderson. Neither of them are a good fit with Suzuki and Caulfield. They don't have the qualities that fit well. And we talked about, you mentioned about being the defensive conscience. That's what's needed for that line. Being someone who's good on the forecheck, digging pucks, the retrieval. That's what kind of player is needed on that line. Being really smart, having good skills, being another shooting option other than Caulfield. So, Josh Anderson doesn't work. RHP doesn't work. But wait a bit, wait a week or so until Dvorak comes back, and then you might see one of the centers move up there, whether that's Monahan, whether that's Newhook, and maybe that's an answer, or at least a temporary answer to who's going to play on that first line. And for now, I think we agree, leave Joshua Waugh where he is to really learn how to be a pro.
Yeah, and as per that first line, I think the reasons you laid out are why Kirby Dach worked in that position last year. It's just he's underutilized if he's put on the wing and only doing those things. So whenever he comes back, I guess next season, obviously I want to continue to see him at center, but it's going to take some time before we find the right fit on that first line. The guy might not even be in the organization quite yet, so patience is key here, and just let all the players develop, and they'll find their spots eventually.
For sure.
Our next question comes from Thomas in Stellarton, Nova Scotia, and what he had to say is, a month ago I predicted that the Habs would finish 30th. But they have exceeded my expectations so far, so when can we start talking about playoffs? And to that, Thomas, I say, I'm going to bring up the patience thing again. We're less than 10 games into the season, so I think that's too small a sample size. A lot of things are pretty kooky right now when you look at the NHL standings. The San Jose Sharks are yet to even win a game. Not that I expect much from them, but like I said, we're still kind of sorting some things out. Let's reconvene around Christmas and see how we feel. I think there are moments where Montreal has been brilliant. I think Jake Allen is responsible for at least 2 wins so far. I think we've seen Montreal's best, and I think we've seen their worst. There's some inconsistencies happening. So like I said, let's wait until Christmas time, and we'll bring this back up again.
But as far as fans, Thomas is a fan in Nova Scotia. When can he start talking about playoffs? Right now. Talk about them right now. And if you believe the Canadiens are going to make the playoffs, talk about it right now. Next week, after they go on a losing streak, then you don't talk about it anymore. That's being a fan. And one of the things that we had a group meeting of the Rocket Sport, of a few of the Rocket Sports folks this week, and we talked about the difference in responding as a fan to responding as a journalist, as a commentator, with more of an objective view. Rather than fans are fanatics, right? That's the short form. They can respond with their heart. They can respond with their gut. They can be all over the map and ride that roller coaster as they wish. But yes, Michael, I agree completely with you. It's a little early, and the thing is that it's something that was predictable. I talked about at the beginning of the season. I talked about the Canadiens' schedule. Opponents, well, they've been a little iffy, but more so, the Canadiens have stuck around home. They've had a lot of home games at home, and their games on the road have been one-offs to places close to Toronto, to Buffalo, and back. So their schedule hasn't been difficult. Where do they go next week? We've got some late starts in Vegas and in Arizona. Those might change things. So I think we got to take some time, whether it's till Christmas or U.S. Thanksgiving, which is kind of the measuring spot, traditional measuring spot of when you can kind of talk about playoffs and make those kinds of projections. And we'll know more about the injuries, if that injury bug continues for the Canadiens or not. We for the fans, you go ahead and talk about all you want, playoffs, and send us texts and emails and respond to us on social media as passionately and as emotionally as you'd like. We're gonna be a little more patient on the show.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too. Right now, Montreal does have a winning record, so enjoy the wins. Definitely, gloat in everyone's face about it, and keep being passionate. But personally, I think Ricky and I will reconvene around Christmas. I think that's when we'll have some clarity.
Sure.
So for this next question, I'll actually get you, Rick, to start this one off.
Sure. It's Adam from Portage la Prairie, Manitoba, and he was watching Thursday's game. And during the broadcast, they interviewed Jeff Gorton. It was nice to hear from Jeff Gorton. So Adam says, during the intermission of Thursday's game, Jeff Gorton said that they were trying to keep Kirby Dach engaged with the team. What does he mean? Great question. And that interview was fascinating. I always like hearing from Jeff Gorton. He was, some of the things we've heard before. He was preaching growth. He was talking about taking small steps. He talked about goaltending and said that this arrangement, this 3 goaltender arrangement, they don't know when they're going to fix it, but it's not going to last all season. He named specifically that Jake Allen's been good. He talked about that special teams must be fixed, but acknowledged that the Canadiens have been good 5-on-5. And he said they have some things to sort out in their own end. So what was he talking about when he mentioned they want to keep Kirby Dach engaged? Well, it's tough. It's really tough when a player is injured, especially for the season. The player knows they're not going to be back for the season. The staff, the fellow players, the teammates know that player's not going to be back for the season. So it's tough to stay engaged. And Jeff Gorton said they're going to have to find ways to keep him engaged. We've seen Marty St. Louis talking to him as he's attending practices and on the bench. And we should note how different that is. This attitude by Jeff Gorton saying we want to keep him engaged. Very different from the Marc Bergevin era. Remember that that injured players were not allowed to be on the ice or in the weight room or at the same time that the team was. He didn't want his active roster reminded by the fact that they were playing without Shea Weber, playing without, Carey Price. So that was kept separate. So this is a very different attitude, I think. I thought it was interesting. Remember last week we talked about one voice only for Yuri Slafkovsky, that no one else was allowed to talk to him and correct him and give him advice and give him pointers other than Marty St. Louis. Remember, you and I both kind of raised our eyebrows about that last week. But Yuri Slafkovsky, and it was interesting, Jeff Gorton said in his intermission, he said, we got to get Yuri not to focus on his stats so much. He wants a goal badly, and we need to. And in his interview on Friday, Yuri said, "I would like to play better, but I have to continue working. I hope I can break the deadlock by scoring the first goal. I can't completely forget my stats." So you can hear that the people around him have said, "Forget about your stats, just play well." And he's like, "No, I can't let that go." But anyway, back to the one voice business. Marty's the only one allowed to interact with him, except that rule's been broken this week. It's been broken by none other than Kirby Dach, because Yuri Slafkovsky on Friday said this, quote, "Since Kirby was injured, he has tried to help me as best he can. He watches my games and offers me advice on how to improve. I hope in the future that we can play together again," because he certainly enjoyed that, and I think Dach made Slafkovsky better. But interesting that that Kirby Dach, and a way of staying engaged is being a mentor, helping out other players, and I found that fascinating. Now, whether that's happened organically, and it sounds like it has, that's a way for a player that maybe Jeff Gorton knows about it. He didn't set it up, but that's a way for Kirby Dach to stay engaged and help the current players.
You know what? I like that quite a bit, actually. Even though Dach is going to be out for the entire season with an injury, keeping him around all the guys, continuing to build a strong relationship and bond, because this is still a really young team. They're still getting to know each other. I think that is brilliant on Jeff Gorton's part. And helping out a young Yuri Slafkovsky, good on Dach. I think Dach seems like a really well-liked guy within that locker room. So it's nice to see him take kind of a leadership approach, stay around the game, be engaged with his teammates. I love hearing all of this, to be honest.
Yeah, me too, for sure.
And for our next question, once again, Rick, I'll get you to start things off.
Sure. We have Cameron from Bathurst, New Brunswick. Cameron says, or asks the question, why is no one talking about Jake Allen? I admit it, I was wrong. He's playing great and is the only Habs goalie we can trust right now. I think that's really well said, Cameron. We're not going to infer any kind of favoritism, given that you're from New Brunswick and that's Fredericton is Jake's hometown, because it's you say that you weren't expecting. I don't think that from Jake Allen, but he's been great. And I think this is kind of a media generated thing, that Jake Allen's performance from last year and his quality as a goaltender was depressed, was pushed down, was dismissed really. And Sam Montembeault's was elevated over the course of the offseason, unreasonably so for both. And I think that, Allen's come out and said he's declared, I want to more games. I want to play more games than I did last season, and he's been great. And Sam Montembeault has really struggled. Let's be honest. He has really struggled in both preseason, and maybe it was he got a little bit too much praise. For having a 350 goals against average last year and a modest save percentage, an average save percentage, and expectations are seeing that why is Montembeault playing so bad and why is Allen playing so well, and that's mainly because of what's been said, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've done our best to give Jake Allen some praises in that first segment based on how his play has been this past week. I think he's been I think he's been fantastic. Maybe an up and down preseason. I think that's a fair analysis. We do our best to be honest about these things on this podcast, at least. But like you said, I think this is pretty mainstream media and Montreal media driven, really trying to talk up Sam Montembeault. I think that if you weren't watching the games last season and you were just listening to what was being said, you would think that Montembeault is a Vezina candidate and the best goalie in the league. So, like we said, I think at least on this podcast, we do our best to be pretty honest about it. I don't think either of us have talked up Sam Montembeault more than we've really needed to. Last season, Monty, he was a little bit better than what I thought he was going to be. I don't think that he was spectacular. And as per Jake Allen, you know what? Credit where credit's due this past week. I think you should be reaching out to some of those Montreal media members and saying, hey, you know, what do you think about Jake Allen? I'd love to hear what they have to say about him now.
Absolutely.
Our next question comes from Luca in St. Leonard, Quebec, and I'll start this one off. And Luca says, heard this on Marinero's podcast. Juraj Slafkovsky is a faster skater than Alex Newhook. Tony swears that it's true. I trust you guys. How do you explain it? And, well, we talked about NHL Edge coming out in that first segment and all the stats. Some of the stats involve skating speed. So I went on there. I did a side-by-side comparison of Juraj Slafkovsky and an Alex Newhook. And, if you just look at max speed... And it says that Juraj Slafkovsky's max speed is 22.64 miles per hour, whereas Alex Newhook's max speed is 21.65 miles per hour. So just looking at that specifically, yes, technically Juraj Slafkovsky has hit a higher speed than Alex Newhook. But let's look at some of the other details that it does provide. We do see that there are miles per hour bursts section here. They have it laid out into 3 different parts. So the first one is 22 plus miles per hour bursts. Slafkovsky has 1. Newhook has 0. Okay, so that's holding up. Okay, what about 20 to 22 miles per hour bursts? Slafkovsky has 10. Alex Newhook has 18. Okay, so between 18 and 20 miles per hour bursts, Slafkovsky has 33. Well, Newhook has 55. So, Rick, I know you have a background in analyzing stats and whatnot. I'm going to do my best here to try and explain this, and you can let me know what your thoughts are.
Sure.
So, what I'm looking at here is, I think Slafkovsky had he went God mode. He had a really big burst of speed at some point, but consistently, Alex Newhook uses his speed a lot more. I think a lot more frequently, because you look at some of the other miles per hour speed bursts, and Slafkovsky is quite a bit less than Alex Newhook. So is Slafkovsky truly faster than Newhook? Well, not consistently, I don't think.
Yeah. This is, it's kind of frustrating because you certainly want more information. We want to be able to dig down into more information. You mentioned that I do have a background in stats, analytics, and analysis, and I, my class, I talk to them about first getting good data, but then having to analyze the data correctly. And my favorite quote was always, mindless analysis of good data will yield meaningless results. And I think that's what's happened here. First of all, we never let just one piece of information, one tool inform us. Is Alex Newhook, is Juraj Slafkovsky a faster skater than Alex Newhook? Have you ever been to practice? Have you ever been, at ice level and watched those two? Have you been to the Bell Center and watched a game? You know the answer to that. Anyone knows the answer to that. Alex Newhook has much more speed. If you were to line up the two of them and go end to end, it wouldn't be fair. It just wouldn't be fair. And yes, I get all the things about Slafkovsky's size and a longer stride, but there's no way he could catch Alex Newhook in a race. But that's not what we're talking about here. And we're talking about, 6 games into the season? Let's look at this data at the end of the season and really think about it. Can we analyze the fact that, as you said, Slafkovsky had one burst. He had one 22 mile an hour plus burst. Alex Newhook hasn't got there yet. But how do they play? Does Slafkovsky charge like a bull in a china shop towards the line? Does Alex Newhook weave in and out? Does he cross the line, make a clean zone entry, and then do a bit of a button hook? All of those things are going to affect your speed. And I think there's a lot more. Yeah, as you said, the 18 to 22 range mile per hour bursts. Alex Newhook has 73, and Juraj Slafkovsky has half that number. The only one is, as you said, that God mode where he got one burst, and one where he just tore up the ice that one time. This is going to change. This is absolutely going to change, I think. So think about context. Think about how does speed affect the way you play? Is a faster player always, is the fastest player in the NHL the best player? Well, speed helps. Connor McDavid proves that. According to the Edge data right now, Rasmus Kupari is the fastest measured, 38.54. You got, you don't have, when we're talking about these two, you don't have them in that range at all. So again, this data is one piece, just one piece that you put alongside all of the rest of the data. You consider the context, and then you make your judgment from there. So in this case, yes, the host took that one piece of information and then made a declaration that obviously is not true. Don't have tunnel vision. Take in all the information you can to make an informed decision.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct too. And I apologize if the numbers end up boring anyone. I don't think there's necessarily a clear answer, but if you compare things with the eye test, I think Newhook probably ends up being the faster skater overall, don't you think?
Absolutely.
So we'll go along here to our next question. This one comes from Trevor in Kirkland Lake, Ontario. And Trevor asks, why has Yoel Armia been scratched for 4 games after he was called up from Laval? And to that I say, c'est une question pour Martin. Old-time listeners might understand that one a little bit. It's a question for Marty St. Louis. Honestly, I don't know why that's the case. Armia went down to Laval after being put on waivers at the beginning of the season. He played pretty well. He got a call up. Montreal's had some injuries and whatnot. But since then, Marty is elected to play Pezzetta over Yoel Armia. Does that mean Pezzetta's the better player? I don't think so. I think Yoel Armia is definitely a useful player and brings a lot more to the table than a Pezzetta can. And, of course, we'll get to see Armia make his season debut with the Montreal Canadiens tonight. But, Rick, what do you think about this?
A great question from Trevor. We don't have the answer. We just don't. It's mystifying to me that he's called up. Yoel Armia is called up. He was playing extremely well, and then he has to sit for 4 games, a healthy scratch. Is he better than Pezzetta? Absolutely. I don't care if Michael Pezzetta, and again, Michael Pezzetta is a great guy. He's a great energy guy. He's a good guy in the locker room. He's a nice guy to talk to. But is he a better player than Yoel Armia? Absolutely not. Is the lineup better with Yoel Armia in it over Michael Pezzetta? You have to agree with that if you've watched any hockey. And I get it. People have a hate on for Yoel Armia and his attitude and his work ethic and all of that. But they are better with him in the lineup. Now you're going to get both Pezzetta and Yoel Armia in the lineup tonight because it's, again, kind of a bizarre decision that it's Ullinen that comes out. He's been better, but Ullinen comes out in favor of Armia. And again, we saw Marty get his back up a little bit last season when Kent Hughes wanted to bring Sean Farrell to Montreal at the end of his season and have him in the lineup. And Marty was kind of, you can make the GM decisions, but I make the lineup decision. Is that what's happening here? I don't know. We don't know. But it really doesn't make any sense. What we know for sure is that Yoel Armia has just been a pure professional about all of this. He didn't pout in Laval. He went out and played well. He had a great attitude, and he was asked about that on Friday.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't help anyone if I'm on a bad mood or anything. Whatever it is, I'm going to handle like a pro and kind of stay positive, stay patient, and see what happens.
Stay positive, stay patient, be a pro. Don't be in a bad mood. It's not going to help me. It's not going to help anybody around me. So, he's got a great attitude about the way he's being handled.
Yeah, absolutely. And a bit of a surprise on my end that Armia ended up on waivers at the beginning of the season. I felt like this was a player that they wanted to maybe showcase for a trade, but, sending him down to Laval, it's one thing, but keeping him a healthy scratch for 4 consecutive games here, at that point, you're really diminishing any trade value that you might have.
It's brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100% that if Yoel Armia, and whether you're a member of Canadiens hockey operations, if you're a member of the fan base, if you think that this guy isn't going to be part of the team, then you want him in the lineup to showcase so that he can be moved on to another team, to be helpful to another team. I'm sure there are folks out there that are saying, why would anybody trade for him when they could have had him for free? Well, there's rules attached to picking up players on waivers that are different from when you trade for a player. So yes, from what we heard, and Dave Pagnotta from Fourth Period has said that there is still interest in Yoel Armia from several teams out there. So you want him in the lineup. Other teams want him in the lineup so they can get a sense of how he would fit on their team.
And our next question here comes from Noah in Syracuse. And once again, Rick, I'll let you start this one off.
Noah in Syracuse said, why did Marty start Caden Primo against the Devils? I get that the kid needed to play, but why against New Jersey? And this is a great question, Noah. And it's something that came up this week. Our own BZ Brian asked this question in our internal Slack group. And it surprised me too, because we saw that in the Buffalo game that Caden Primo stayed in Montreal, and he stayed working with Eric Raymond. And my guess was that the next day against New Jersey in Montreal, that Caden Primo would be put in as the backup. Let him go through the whole pregame process, get acclimatized to that, getting the jersey on, taking shots in warm-ups, and act as the backup that night for Sam Montembeault. And then Thursday night, he would make his start against Columbus. Now, if Caden Primo is third in your tier, wouldn't you want him against the Columbus Blue Jackets projected to be in the bottom 5 this season, rather than who's projected, a team that's projected to be in the top, one of the better teams in New Jersey? It was kind of bizarre, really bizarre, that they would throw Primo to the dogs kind of thing against the Devils and give Montembeault a soft matchup against Columbus, unless you're not confident in Montembeault, unless you're trying to protect Montembeault. And maybe that's the only thing I can figure, is that they've seen how shaky Montembeault has been in the preseason, in his actions so far. They were worried about what he would further degrading his confidence against New Jersey. So give him the easy matchup, the soft matchup against Columbus. And if Caden Primo went in and had a bad game against New Jersey, then maybe you can slip him through waivers and get him to Laval. Is that the scenario that they had crafted? I don't know. I think that Caden Primo on Tuesday night was too good to be ignored. If he's put on waivers, but bad enough that he's not proving that he's not an NHL goaltender. So I don't think it worked out. And Montembeault wasn't great in the soft matchup against Columbus. So that kind of blows that all up.
Yeah, so obviously that New Jersey game was a back-to-back. Allen had the first start in Buffalo, so that ruled out Allen for getting the start against the New Jersey Devils. I was pretty surprised, too, that it was Caden Primo getting that start, his first game of the season against a very good team. Some even predict that these are a cup contender. He had his moments where he looked brilliant, and he had his moments where he was less than that. So, again, I think for the reasons you laid out there with maybe wanting to give Montembeault the soft matchup against the Columbus, that might have been the reason. But I still found this to be quite the bizarre decision, and I don't know that I fully understood putting the kid out there. And if you have any faith in still trying to develop Caden Primo, putting him out against a stiffer competition, I think that might hurt his confidence a little bit, if anything. So I'm not sure that I fully understand this one, to be completely honest.
So great question by Noah there.
Yeah, our final question here comes from Michael Ramey on YouTube, and I'll let you finish things off here, Rick.
Michael says, how likely is it that the glaring weaknesses in Caden Primo's game, as pointed out by Marty Biron, can be effectively addressed? This might be my favorite question. Michael, is a great question. Obviously, you've been listening to the Canadiens Connection coverage. You've been watching our coverage on YouTube and Amy Johnson's Habs Hockey Report show on there. And it's a terrific question. He has weaknesses, and can't they be repaired? So let me first play what Marty Biron said when he was on our show this summer, talking about Caden Primo and his technical flaws. And just to remind you what Marty said.
I watched Caden Primo play, and I think there's big deficiencies in his game. I don't think he's got the NHL speed, so maybe he's had good success at the AHL level, but then he gets to the NHL, and I think the speed is very, very evident that it's lacking. And I think he lacks athleticism too. Now, people are going to say, oh, he's made some very athletic saves where he dives around or whatever. That's not really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about body control. I'm talking about being able to explode one way, and then all of a sudden you have to plant an edge, you have to have body control, and you explode the other way. Like, I feel like so many times we see Caden Primo where he pushes one direction, and if the play's there, he's going to be in the right position. But if the play moves to another location, it takes a while for him to get there. So that's where the speed and the athleticism of goaltending is important, and I think he's behind in these two fronts.
This is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And I should say, again, Marty Biron was on the show in the summer. This is way before the season started. This was way before Caden Primo got into a game. And what he described there is exactly what we saw on Tuesday night. Folks were salivating over that desperation save, that circus save that Caden Primo made, but that's not what Marty Biron. That's not what would impress Marty Biron. It's easy to throw your body. It's easier to throw your body and make a last minute ditch save than being in control. And certainly Caden, he made the save. Full credit there. He threw his body at it, but he was in no position. If the puck went back the other way, if there's a rebound, to make any follow up on that. And I think that Marty's talking about his lack of speed, his lack of athleticism, his lack of body control. to be able to go one way and plant and come back the other way. That's not part of Primo's game. And that's you don't see that so much in the AHL. In the NHL, you get that extra pass. NHL offenses move the goaltender around, and that's why Primo is being exposed. Every game that he's out there, his body control is poor, his positioning is poor, which causes him to give rebounds. His rebound control is poor. But to get back to Michael's question, these are the glaring weaknesses that Marty Braun pointed out. Can they be addressed? Well, part of athleticism and all that. That's you're either athletic or you're not. But making use of the athleticism that you have and making use of the body control. Eric Raymond, I'm sure, has spent time with Caden Primo on that. I'm sure Marco Marciano in Laval is a terrific goaltending coach. I would guess that he has tried with Caden to address some of these issues. If we're still seeing them after all of these seasons of him in Laval, of him being called up, can they be effectively addressed? Absolutely. Will he address them? I don't know. I'll just remind you of one thing. Why did Caden Primo drop to the 7th round? He was a goaltending prospect that came with a lot of accolades. Yet he dropped to the 7th round, and the Canadiens picked him up there. Why? Because his coach in college hockey labeled him uncoachable. Remember that. We don't know if that attitude has changed. We don't know if he's more open to coaching now. And we don't know, to answer Michael's question, if those issues can be addressed by coaching. But all we can tell you is his history, and what we're seeing on the ice, that he hasn't yet been able to address the flaws that Marty Braun brilliantly pointed out.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer coming from you there, Rick. I guess to add on too, how much can you improve if you're not getting into many games? Right now, Montreal's carrying 3 goalies. He was a healthy scratch for the first 2 weeks, and he just had his first start this past Tuesday. So can he really improve from just practicing? I don't know. I would like to see him in more game situations to try and work these kinks out. And we've seen it a few times over the years, too, where he's in Laval, he plays a few games, he's all right. Then he gets called up, he plays a game in the NHL level, doesn't really go well. Then he gets sent back down, and then he gets called back up. It's hard to get comfortable. I don't think anyone's going to improve themselves or get comfortable when they're continuously moving around between levels at that point. This is why I don't understand why they are even carrying him around as a third goalie at this point. Just put him on waivers, get him to Laval. If he passes through waivers, great. If not, then you know what? It's not anyone's problem anymore. You have other goalie prospects a little bit further down the line, but they're going to be there. And, I don't see why Caden Primo wouldn't benefit from a fresh start at this point. I don't think it's gone his way in Montreal or Laval at this point. And like Marty Biron has pointed out, he certainly has this big gaping hole in his game. You go back to Tuesday, and he made a lot of brilliant-looking saves, but I'll have to go back and watch the tape. But maybe some of these brilliant-looking saves could have been handled different. If he didn't slide all the way to one end, would he have had to have made those big desperation saves? Maybe it's more about him learning to track the puck better and make basic saves. And you know what? If he can be athletic when it comes to desperation time, great. But right now, I don't know how Caden Primo is supposed to improve in the circumstances that he's currently in.
Yeah, he needs to be, matched up with a goalie coach, and whether that's Eric, whether that's Marco in Laval, and he needs to accept the advice that he's given and work on those things. The body movement, the body control, you can't necessarily work. You're just reacting on the ice, especially at the NHL level. You can't work on that in games. And if he's not feeling confident about that, and we know that He talks about being calm, but he isn't. He's a very emotional goaltender, and a lot of those things get stuck in his head, and he finds it hard to react. Again, we'll remind you about that tremendous interview with Marty Biron, and we asked him, should the Canadiens be concerned about if losing Caden Primo on waivers, and he said no. That would be an opportunity for the organization to say, okay, this is who we have to work with now, and an opportunity for Caden Primo. And I know the response to that is always, yes, but at least Caden Primo has NHL experience, and the only goaltender, that could be called up to have that. Well, yes, but it's bad NHL experience. He's not been good at all when he's been recalled.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess if I were to answer Michael's question specifically, I think there is a plan in which these things could get addressed. It's up to Caden Primo, and it's up to the Montreal organization to decide whether or not they're going to take on that plan. It's solely up to both of them and working together to, develop Caden into an NHL goaltender. I don't know that we've lost all hope on him, but his value, I think, just diminishes the further we go along, to be honest.
But what a great batch of questions. Terrific questions out of this mailbag. And it was our pleasure to be able to, in some cases, answer them. And in some cases, we'll be honest, say we just don't know. So keep them coming in. Send them to us, 5853-ROCKET. Send us an email, hello@rocketsportsmedia.com, or reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or YouTube.
Absolutely. And make sure you include your first name and where you're from. That way we know who we're talking to and we get to see where everyone's from. As you saw today, it was all over the place, and we have listeners all over the globe, all across North America, some even in Europe, Australia, everywhere. So let us know where you're from. I love to hear that. And, as our listeners asked us a whole bunch of questions, we have a question for our listeners that we're going to get to in the next segment here. So the Habs have won 3 of 4 games this past week. Has your opinion changed? Is this team a playoff team? We want to hear from you, but for now, we'll take our final break. Stay with us. Thank you for listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast, and this is on Rocket Sports Radio.
The Canadiens Connection is proud to be a partner of Rocket Sports Media, digital media publishers of sports and entertainment websites. Their mission is to build a worldwide network of sports fans who are informed, engaged, entertained, and connected. Learn more about RSM, its team, and its portfolio of brands at rocketsportsmedia.com. I bet you enjoy sporting your best Habs jerseys, dressing up your kids and pets in the cutest Habs gear, and showing off your decked-out hockey cave or fanning. Well, don't just show your friends, show your Habs. The Rocket Sports Media team wants you to boast your finest pictures for our global network of Montreal Canadiens fans. Include the hashtag #ShowYourHabs when posting your fan photos on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Then log on to showyourhabs.com to see your entries, along with photos and posts from Habs fans all over the world. A proud member of the Rocket Sports Media Network. If you're a business owner looking for the perfect platform to reach a targeted audience of customers, Rocket Sports Media is the solution. Our global hockey community provides unmatched social media reach to an attentive demographic of sports and entertainment fans. We can provide visibility to your company, helping you to engage and leverage this prime group of potential clientele. In addition, we also offer sponsorship opportunities for fan events and featured areas of website content, giving you name and logo recognition. Visit rocketsportsmedia.com to contact us regarding this unique marketing opportunity. For the most trusted source of news, analysis, and features about the Montreal Canadiens, log in to thn.com/Montreal, your year-round source for anything Habs related. That's thn.com/Montreal.
welcome back to episode 267 of the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. Please make sure you're following at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Also check out our website, canadiensconnection.fm. And feel free to text us anytime via the Rocket Sports text line. It's 5853-ROCKET. That's 5853-ROCKET. We just heard a whole bunch of questions from our fantastic listeners in that second segment when we reached into the Rocket Sports Mailbag, and continue to send in those questions. Any comments you have, any feedback you might have, it's 5853-ROCKET is one of the best ways you can reach out to us. And Rick, we provide a whole lot of coverage on these Montreal Canadiens, and I think we do a pretty good job of keeping everyone up to date. And the good thing is we have it all in one place, don't we?
We do. All the Canadiens coverage in just one place, and that is thn.com/Montreal. It's new, but you know what? A whole bunch of Canadiens fans have found us. Our numbers are terrific. If you haven't found us, you're going to want to go to thn.com/Montreal. One more time, THN, that's the hockey news, thn.com/Montreal. And there you'll get all the information about the Montreal Canadiens, about the Laval Rocket, about the Trois-Rivières Lions, and about prospects wherever they might play. Every bit of knowledge that you want to know is going to be there for you at thn.com/Montreal. That's where this season you're going to find all the content from the entire Rocket Sports team.
Absolutely. And if you're looking for some more multimedia type content, well, you're going to want to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search at All Habs. You'll find us. Hit that subscribe button. Throughout the week, we have our Habs Hockey Report show hosted by Amy Johnson, who does a fantastic job. Her latest episode is entitled It's Time to Make a Decision on Caden Primo. Tune into that one. Leave a like if you like what you saw. Leave a comment if you have any questions or comments or concerns for Amy. Get engaged. Amy loves to interact with all her viewers. And brand new, there's also another show that she's hosting on her YouTube channel, and this one's the Rocket Hockey Report show. Everything Laval Rocket. The latest episode is the Laval Rocket lead the AHL in what categories? And there's a very special guest, our AHL guru, Patrick Williams. You'll know him if you listen to the Press Zone. This is a great way to keep up to date with everything Montreal prospects and Laval Rocket, so make sure you tune into that. Like I said, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, leave a like if you saw what you heard. Also, our podcast, this one you're listening to, the Canadiens Connection podcast, is now on YouTube. We put that up on Mondays. Last week's episode, Kirby Dach's knee recovery. How will he bounce back? We have that one up there, so you might be already listening to us on YouTube. If not, go ahead onto YouTube, give us another listen. That's a great way to interact with us as well in the comments section. Leave a like, hit that subscribe button. Don't miss a single episode.
Make sure you go and subscribe, because it's we put a lot of effort into our YouTube account, youtube.com/allhabs. As you said, Mondays, that's the YouTube version of this podcast appears. On Tuesday, it's the Habs Hockey Report show. On Thursdays, the Rocket Hockey Report. Patrick Williams is tremendous, and we're so happy to have him as part of our team. You're going to see Patrick this season, not only hear him, but see him on the Rocket Hockey Report, and you're going to hear him next week on the Canadiens Connection. Yes, Patrick Williams is going to be making his Canadiens Connection debut. He's going to be a regular monthly guest on the Canadiens Connection. He is the American Hockey League guru. Nobody knows more about the American Hockey League than Patrick. Nobody knows more about the Laval Rocket than Chris and Amy. So what a combination we have for you on our YouTube channel.
So subscribe to the premier Rocket Sports Radio podcast on your favorite podcasting app, and never miss a single episode of the Canadiens Connection. You can also find it at canadiensconnection.fm. That's your inside link to the Montreal Canadiens.
And we're taking our inside link to YouTube for live streams this season. We had one this week, and we're going to have more. Michael, you're hitting this up with a couple of our Rocket Sports contributors. And my goodness, there was a live stream, Montreal Canadiens versus New Jersey Devils. What a show. You guys were tremendous. Really enjoyed the live stream show.
Well, we appreciate that, and we appreciate those who tuned in to check it out. It's true, through the Hockey Podcast Network. I believe they stream it on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We did a live stream watch-along for the game against the New Jersey Devils this past Tuesday. We also had Neil from the Devil State of Mind podcast join us, kind of leading the way. We had our Rocket Sports Media contributor, Nathan, who helps us take care of social media. He joined on there as well, and we had a lot of fun. This is something that we're going to try to do periodically throughout the season with different members of our Rocket Sports Media team. So stay tuned for that. We don't have any further official announcements, but we'll make sure we let you know. And if you want to watch a game with us from the Rocket Sports Media team, definitely tune in and look out for those. It's going to be a ton of fun, and it's going to be interactive too. There's a whole live chat happening, so that's another good place to send in questions if you have any.
So does this sound like a lot of fun to you, that we have a lot of fun, that the Rocket Sports team has a whole lot of fun covering the Montreal Canadiens and the entire organization? Well, you're right. It's true. And we're growing. We're putting out new products, as you heard, more content. And if you want to be part of this, we've talked about it before, reach out to us. Reach out to us on social media. Send us an email at hello@rocketsportsmedia.com. Or send a text to our Rocket Sports text line at 5853-ROCKET.
Yeah, we want to be in this Montreal Canadiens season the whole way with you guys, so definitely keep engaged. And Rick, I believe our Rocket Sports Media team is also recruiting and looking to add to our great team.
Yeah, for sure. As I said, if you want to be part of this, if you want to be part of our group that covers the Montreal Canadiens, reach out in that regard. If you want to be, if you have an interest in hockey in Quebec or in the Maritimes and you want to be part of our crew that covers the QMJHL, reach out as well. And whether it's writing, whether it's however you can contribute, we do want to hear from you.
Absolutely. So looking forward to hearing from those who apply. So now it's a good time to get to our Canadiens Connection question of the week, and let us know. The Habs have won 3 out of 4 games this past week. Has this changed your opinion? Is this team a playoff team? We want to hear from you. Reach out to us, and Rick, we get tons of emails, tweets, texts, and everything. A lot of our listeners love to reach out to us throughout the week, and we get plenty of interactions and plenty of response to last week's episode as well. Inside the Injury, examining Kirby Dach's road to recovery. That's episode 266, and that was the debut of Doc Morris, Stephen Morris, Dr. Stephen Morris, who is a new contributor to Rocket Sports, and what a terrific episode, breaking down. Sorry to use that phrase. Sorry, discussing the injury to Kirby Dach, and you know how that happened mechanically, what it means for Kirby Dach, and what it means for his recovery and his future. If you haven't heard it, happy to have Doc Morris on. Probably every 6 weeks or so we'll get him in the studio and to record an episode. And last week's episode 266, you really want to hear the big topic segment with him talking about Kirby Dach. Yeah, we had plenty of reactions to that one, and actually Judy from BC via Facebook reached out to us, and she had something to say about how the Montreal Canadiens opening ceremony went. What she had to say is, yes, Rick, I was very upset and disappointed with the opening ceremony, not introducing Carey, who is technically still with the team, and not doing a nice retirement video for Paul Byron sucked. Never mind that they supposedly want the new kids to make their own history, but the league actually trying to clamp down on the length of the opening ceremonies is just more Bettman BS. So I look forward to the opening ceremonies because despite a dismal previous year, it always gives us hope for the coming year. So if you listen back to that episode, Rick and I talked about that opening ceremony and how disappointed we were in that one. And it's nice that we got to hear Judy's perspective on that as well.
I really like the way she phrased that at the end, that last season was a long season. It was difficult for fans. It's difficult to be up for every game. And so what you're expecting from the opening ceremonies is something to energize you and give you hope for the coming season. And boy, the opening ceremony just didn't do that. So that's really well said by Judy.
And we had a text come in from, I guess, a newer listener, Chris from Ohio, the other Ohio, and he always sends in these wonderful messages to us. I'll let you get to that one, Rick.
Yes, from the other Hamilton, and that is Hamilton, Ohio. And Chris was in Montreal. He says, hello and happy Tuesday. Was in beautiful rain-soaked Montreal this past week celebrating a big anniversary. Congratulations. We don't know what anniversary, but congratulations anyway. It's a lovely city, great food, love the art scene, and naturally, I saw my first game ever at the Bell Center. A great experience, kept my streak alive of never seeing the Habs lose, and he approximates that he's seen 15 to 20 games. Some of those games were when he was a youngster growing up in Montreal and went to the Montreal Forum. He said, regarding last Saturday's podcast, I loved the session with Doc, that being Doc Morris. It was very informative. We talked about JF Uhl declaring that it was a must-win last week. He says, that is Chris says, a must-win game in the first 2 weeks, absurd. Uhl's a fool and should not be coaching the Rocket. He's the anti-whisperer, the antithesis of Marty St. Louis. Newbie, as he calls Alex Newhook, needs to step up in Kirby's absence. Because we asked, last week's question of the week was, in the absence of Kirby Doc, who do you think will step up to the plate and fill his role? Well, Chris says a newbie needs to step up in Doc's absence. Kirby's injury is wholly unfortunate, but to Marty's point, it's next man up. Take your shot when it's presented to you. While it's a lot of responsibility on a new team in a new city with new players, this is exactly what Alex wanted. Now he simply has to grab the ring. Great, complete response there from Chris, and certainly we can tell he listened to last week's episode.
Absolutely. Love all these messages, so definitely continue to send all of those in along the way. And we have a busy week coming up between now and next Saturday when the next podcast comes out. Some late nights. Of course, tonight on Saturday, October the 28th, Winnipeg comes to Montreal. Looks like we're getting a Jake Allen start. Doesn't look like Connor Hellebuck's going to be in net for the Winnipeg Jets. So I guess that means Laurent Brossoit is going to be in there. Day off in between on the 30th. Montreal heads out to Vegas for a 10 p.m. start, and then another couple days off before Montreal heads out to Arizona, and that's going to be another late night start on November the 2nd. So plenty to happen and plenty to talk about on our next episode. But that's going to be a wrap for us today. Thank you all for listening. Subscribe to the Canadiens Connection podcast in the player or on any of your favorite podcasting apps. Share on social media. Enjoy the week, and happy Halloween to all of our listeners. We'll be back here next Saturday, November the 4th, 2023, for another great episode. Thank you all for listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio.
Click subscribe so you never miss an episode of Canadiens Connection. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Rocket Sports.